Thank you, Nick. I feel like my viewing habits probably tell the world exactly what I am, a feminist, progressive political consultant. And here all these years, I thought that was a choice that I'd made to be just that. But our next speaker, Michael Long, thinks otherwise, that maybe I was just wired that way. So let's welcome to the stage Michael Long.
You had some choice in the matter, I'm sure. That's it. Thanks for being here. The brain is a complex thing, but in one way, it's kind of simple. It divides the world along a single axis into things that are near and things that are far away. Now, things that are near are things we can control immediately, like our watch or a cell phone, but things that are far away, if we want to control them, we have to plan and calculate. And whether this is reaching across the table for salt or flying to the moon, to the brain, it's exactly the same kind of challenge. So the question is, why would the brain divide the world this way? Well, it has to do with nothing less than the meaning, the purpose of life. Now, you and I can argue all day long about what the purpose of life might be. But when it comes to the realm of science, the matter is settled. The purpose of life is to keep living. And we need a lot of things if we're going to do that. But in particular, we need shelter, we need food, and we have to propagate the species. Or as I like to put it, rent gets paid, dinner gets made, and we all get, moving right along. None of these things, unfortunately, can be found nearby. If we want them, we have to go across that axis and look for them. And fortunately, the brain has equipped us with a system to help us do that. It makes us want these things, and it gives us the means to figure out how to get them. This is the dopamine system. Whenever we encounter something new that might be useful to us, we get a little buzz. The dopamine buzz. And you know this feeling. You're walking down the street, you hear that ding off your cell phone, might be something good. Yeah, you know that feeling. Now, if you happen to be a caveman, this is an excellent system to have because it keeps you on the hunt for the things you need to stay alive. But if you have an apartment or a hotel room here, and you have directions on your phone to the grocery store, and you can use Tinder. If it's 2018, you don't need this system so much, but it turns out that your brain doesn't know it's 2018. And this dopamine drive has to go somewhere, and it does. It affects how we conduct ourselves in business and culture. It affects how we fall in love. It affects immigration, and it affects politics. Now, we all have some dopamine, and that's necessary, but some of us have more than others, and this can be for better and for worse. For instance, if you have high dopamine in the part of your brain that allows you to make connections, well, this might make you very creative. For instance, better stay away from those who carry around a fire hose. You don't need a weatherman to know which way the wind blows. That's Bob Dylan's Subterranean Homesick Blues. If you can think like that, good for you. But what if you couldn't stop? You might end up with racing thoughts at best, or at worst, what psychiatrists call word salad, which is a symptom of schizophrenia. Another example. What if you had high dopamine in the part of your brain that allows you to calculate and plan? Well, this might make you very good at business, but that can go off the rails as well. We all know people who are ambitious, and then we know, I'll use the nice word, cutthroats. People who are shooting for the top, but they're not satisfied when they get there. That's because they're not doing it for the reward at the end of the line. They're doing it for the more dopamine buzz all along the way. And when they get to the top, they're still not satisfied. And that need, that urge has to go somewhere, and it does. For instance, have you noticed that many of the offenders in the Me Too movement are often high-powered CEOs and celebrities? There you go. Have you noticed or have you wondered why winners cheat? That's why. Or to take it down a level, Have you ever noticed that the person most likely to afford a beach house is least likely to enjoy it? You know why? Because there's no dopamine buzz associated with sitting in an Adirondack chair on the eastern shore. It just doesn't happen. And that brings me to politics. Now, the facts are pretty simple. Nothing new in this. If you're a self-described conservative, you say you want, among other things, to hold on to the things you have. If you're a self-described progressive, you want, among other things, action and change, and you want it right now. So it won't surprise you when I tell you that, on average, in the main, progressives have more dopamine than conservatives. So what are the consequences? Just this. Running for office and running the government call on planning and calculation and creativity, just the things that give a neurochemical reward to people with high dopamine, people on the left. Now, I've heard it said that reality has a liberal bias, and I'm not even going to get into that with you all. There's no way I would touch that. But I will say that government absolutely has a liberal bias because government exists to do things. Government takes action. If progressivism is the hand, government is the glove. Not by nature of its policies, but by nature of its nature. Now, if that's true, you ought to want to know how in the world we have conservative politicians at all. And of course we do, but they're just not very good at making major conservative change. It just doesn't happen. And that's because dopamine favors action, and government action is rarely the path to conservative ends. Conservatives favor market forces and individual action like that, not so much coordination and planning. And if you happen to be on that side, it gets even worse. Wait and see is a perfectly reasonable position to take on a whole lot of issues. But what is it that voters complain about all the time? Do-nothing politicians. So, I'm not going to say that we don't have any high dopamine conservatives and low dopamine liberals. Of course we do. And we're not slaves to dopamine. We, except for addiction, we have a choice as to what we're going to do. And of course, political choice depends on so many other factors. But I am saying that in the main, the level of dopamine in any given individual tends to point us in one direction or the other. And the people you work for and with every day, the people who are taking hard, solid action in this area, are going to, most of the time, prefer action over inaction and power over passivity. And now you know why. One more thing. Dopamine is like a Riga behind the victorious Caesar. But instead of whispering, memento homo, you're only a man, dopamine shouts, and it shouts one thing: wouldn't you like to have